While everyone's watching aircraft carriers and hypersonic missiles, the US Navy is quietly doing something far more dangerous to its rivals. Uncrewed ships are crossing oceans on their own. Autonomous submarines are operating for months without sailors on board. Carrier drones are extending strike range without firing a shot. No press conferences, no hype. Just a fundamental shift in naval power that most people don't even realize is already happening. The most dangerous part of America's unmanned Navy isn't what it can do. It's how quietly it's already doing it. Ghost Fleet Overlord prototypes sailed more than 46,000 nautical miles, with transits conducted almost exclusively in autonomous mode. No crew controlling them, no human at the helm, just autonomous vessels crossing oceans, passing through the Panama Canal, and operating with destroyers, completely changing what naval power means. And nobody's talking about it. While the world obsesses over hypersonic missiles and stealth fighters, the United States Navy is quietly deploying something far more revolutionary. A fleet of unmanned vessels and submarines that operate for months without human intervention, carry the same missiles as destroyers, and cost a fraction of traditional warships. Each can be armed with a vertical launch system with 16 to 32 missile launching tubes. That's not a reconnaissance drone. That's distributed firepower that adversaries can't sink fast enough to matter. Let me show you the drone program that's rewriting naval warfare, while the Pentagon stays deliberately quiet about what they're actually building. The foundation is Ghost Fleet Overlord, and if that name sounds like science fiction, it's because the capability essentially is. As of January 2024, the fleet consisted of 3 ships delivered and 1 under construction. These aren't small drones. The Ghost Fleet vessels measure between 200 and 300 feet in length, similar to the size of corvettes. But instead of requiring crews of 100 sailors, they operate with 6 humans aboard for safety. And most functions happen autonomously. More than 600 hours of autonomy testing were completed during the first phase, including several long-range autonomous transits in a complex navigational environment. These vessels performed interactions in compliance with international regulations for preventing collisions at sea. They didn't just sail in straight lines across empty ocean. They navigated shipping lanes, avoided other vessels, and operated in complex maritime environments, all without constant human control. The Nomad completed its journey of 4,421 nautical miles in June 2021, following the first Ranger, which completed a similar transit in October 2020. Both vessels traveled most of the distance in autonomous mode except for the stretch passing through the Panama Canal, which was covered manually. Think about what that means operationally. A vessel launches from the Gulf Coast, autonomously transits thousands of miles, passes through one of the world's most complex waterways with human supervision, then continues autonomously to San Diego. That's not experimental. That's operational capability being proven in real-world conditions. But here's where Ghost Fleet becomes truly revolutionary. The vessels are designed as low-cost, high-endurance ships that can be reconfigured with various modular payloads, including anti-surface warfare and strike payloads for unmanned missions. Now imagine a carrier strike group. Traditionally, you have perhaps 10 major vessels: the carrier, cruisers, destroyers, submarines. Each one costs billions and requires hundreds of crew. Lose one destroyer, and you've eliminated 10% of the surface fleet's combat power in that battle space. Ghost Fleet changes that calculation entirely. You can deploy 20 unmanned surface vessels for the cost of one destroyer. Each carries missiles. Each can act as a sensor platform. Each can serve as a decoy drawing enemy fire. And if one gets sunk, it didn't take 300 sailors with it, and you have 19 more still operating. During deployment, the service found that the USVs could operate for about 2 weeks at a time without human intervention. The civilian mariners aboard had to deactivate autonomy systems only 13 times throughout the transits for safety reasons. And only 6 of those interventions were due to concerns with how autonomy was handling the ship. The other 7 were due to rough seas or other system issues unrelated to autonomous navigation. That's less than 1 human intervention per month for vessels crossing the Pacific, operating with numbered fleets, and conducting complex maneuvers. Now layer in the underwater element. The Orca XLUUV, extra large unmanned underwater vehicle. And when a Navy captain calls it an unmanned submarine, he's not exaggerating. The current vehicle measures about 85 feet in length, has a displacement of about 85 tons, and uses a diesel-electric propulsion system that gives it a 6,000 nautical mile range. The UUV features a modular payload bay that is about 400 inches in length and has a capacity of 8 tons. This equates to 9 medium-sized UUVs or 48 small-diameter UUVs. Think about what that enables. An Orca launches from its home base, transits thousands of miles autonomously underwater, arrives at an operational area, deploys dozens of smaller sensor drones that map the seafloor and detect enemy submarines, then returns home, all without ever surfacing in contested waters and without risking a single sailor. It is expected to provide the ability to launch, recover, operate, and establish communications with the vehicle from a home base away from the area of operation without the need for Navy personnel. The vehicle can travel to an area of operation, loiter there, communicate, deploy payloads, and return to its home base. The operational range is nearly 6.5 thousand nautical miles. That's the distance from San Diego to the Philippine Sea and back. The Navy accepted delivery of the first Orca in December 2023, with 5 more scheduled for delivery. And the missions it can perform remain deliberately vague. The U.S. Navy uses the XLUUV for potential capabilities such as mine countermeasures, anti-surface warfare, anti-submarine warfare, electronic warfare, and strike missions. Read between those lines. An 85-ton autonomous submarine with an 8-ton payload bay and strike mission capability means this platform could potentially deploy weapons, mines, torpedoes, or worse, without any manned submarine ever entering the battle space. But there's a third layer to this unmanned revolution that nobody's paying attention to, and it might be the most strategically important: the MQ-25 Stingray. This carrier-based drone doesn't carry bombs. It doesn't shoot missiles. It does something far more valuable. It extends the range of every strike fighter on the carrier by hundreds of miles. Vice Admiral Mike Shoemaker said that the MQ-25 can extend the Super Hornet's 450 nautical mile unrefueled combat radius to beyond 700 nautical miles. That's a 55% range increase. And here's why that matters more than any new missile. Currently, FA-18 Super Hornets spend 20 to 30% of carrier flight operations acting as tankers, refueling other aircraft. That's combat jets burning flight hours and maintenance performing a support role instead of striking targets. The MQ-25 eliminates that waste entirely. It increases carrier air-wing lethality by relieving combat aircraft from aerial refueling missions, allowing ordnance to replace refueling stores. Every Super Hornet that doesn't have to carry refueling tanks can carry bombs instead. Every sortie that doesn't burn fighter flight hours on tanking preserves aircraft readiness. And every carrier air wing gets effectively larger without adding a single manned aircraft. On 4 June 2021, the first refueling test was conducted, with the MQ-25 providing fuel to an FA-18F Super Hornet. The mission lasted about 4.5 hours with 325 pounds of fuel transferred. Further refueling tests were performed with E-2 and F-35C. The system works. The Navy plans to procure 73 Stingrays, with operational deployment expected by 2026. Images of an MQ-25 model released in April 2024 showed AGM-158C LRASM anti-ship missiles on the underwing hardpoints. That's not a tanker anymore. That's a strike platform. A low observable unmanned aircraft that can refuel fighters, conduct intelligence gathering, and potentially deliver anti-ship missiles, all while extending the carrier's effective reach by hundreds of miles. China built anti-access area denial systems specifically to keep carriers 1,000 miles from their coast. The MQ-25 just added 250 miles to the carrier's striking range, putting targets back within reach. Now understand what happens when you combine all 3 systems. Ghost Fleet Overlord vessels deploy ahead of the carrier's strike group, creating a distributed sensor and missile network across thousands of square miles. Orca XLUUVs operate beneath them, mapping underwater terrain, detecting enemy submarines, and deploying payloads in contested areas without risking manned submarines. And MQ-25 Stingrays extend the range of every manned aircraft, allowing strikes deeper into enemy territory while the carrier remains safely distant. This is the concept the Pentagon barely discusses. Sensors everywhere, shooters anywhere, humans where judgment matters. The unmanned systems take the risk off sailors, expand sensor coverage massively, absorb enemy fire, and force adversaries to waste expensive weapons on cheap platforms. And most importantly, they scale faster and cheaper than manned ships. Building a destroyer takes years and costs over $2 billion. Converting a commercial vessel into a Ghost Fleet Overlord takes months and costs tens of millions. A carrier air wing of 60 aircraft requires hundreds of maintainers and pilots. Adding MQ-25 drones adds capability without adding personnel. An attack submarine costs $3 billion and takes 7 years to build. An Orca costs a fraction of that, and Boeing delivered the first unit in 2023, just 4 years after contract award. But here's why you don't hear much about these programs. Their final roles aren't fully disclosed. Their real power comes from how they're networked, not how they look individually. And talking too much about them helps adversaries adapt. During deployment, the 4 USVs sailed more than 46,000 nautical miles, allowing the division to test the vessel's continuous navigation. They operated with United States Navy and Marine Corps assets, in addition to allies like Japan and Australia. The Navy isn't advertising these capabilities because they fundamentally change the naval warfare calculus in ways that benefit from adversary uncertainty. If China knows exactly how Ghost Fleet operates, where Orcas deploy, and what MQ-25s can carry, they can develop specific countermeasures. But if the capabilities remain deliberately vague, if unmanned vessels might be sensor platforms or might be missile magazines, if underwater drones might be conducting surveillance or might be laying mines, then adversaries have to defend against every possibility. The Ghost Fleet program officially concluded its experimental phase in January 2022 and transferred vessels to Surface Development Squadron 1. The Orca completed its first in-water test in April 2022 and began autonomous testing in July 2023. The first MQ-25 Unmanned Air Warfare Center was installed on USS George H.W. Bush in August 2024. These aren't future programs anymore. They're operational systems being integrated into the fleet right now. And the Navy is already planning expansion. Plans call for 9 Orcas total. The service expects to field a large number of Ghost Fleet-type vessels, with requirements being streamlined for rapid production. And the MQ-25 program will equip every Nimitz and Ford-class carrier with unmanned refueling capability. This represents something unprecedented: the transition from a fleet of ships to a fleet of systems, many of them unmanned, autonomous, and already operating today. China is building Type 055 cruisers at enormous cost. Russia struggles to maintain its aging surface fleet, and the United States is deploying autonomous vessels that cost a fraction of traditional warships, operate without crews, and multiply combat power across the battle space. The Navy drone program the Pentagon barely talks about isn't coming. It's here. The platforms operated with numbered fleets, sailed 46,000 nautical miles, and required human intervention less than once per month. That's not experimental. That's the future of naval warfare, and it's already operational, while adversaries are still trying to match capabilities the United States demonstrated with manned platforms a decade ago. The real program isn't the drones, it's the philosophy. Sensors everywhere, shooters anywhere, humans where judgment matters. And while everyone watches the carriers and destroyers, the quiet revolution is happening with platforms most people don't even know exist.